Hello there, and I would like to look at Anime Adventure's best update in my opinion. And this is Madoka Magica update. Now, what made this update so good is the units and very notably some of the just quality of life and just great balance updates. So, we'll talk about these because they're less exciting but are very impactful. So, first up we have where is it? Armored. So this is a huge nerf to Armored, and it actually made a whole new classic character, which we'll talk about when we get to Homeru and Mami. I'll put that to the back, and I'll also put Charming back. Sorry, I just wanted to order how I will talk about them. Then we'll have Mochi getting able to match Emilia, because Emilia, iconically, is one of the coolest and most like utility focused characters in anime adventures that was outside of Infinite. You'd almost always see it, as which is very good. Even though there's many who slow, Emilia is the icon, and having, you know, one of the easier to get characters also being able to kind of fill that role is very nice. And then just some generic stuff and just content. People love content. So let's talk about the units. Alright, so we have Homeru. Now this is a unit who was one of, if not the best units in the game. It is a 3-place, so that's kind of nice. And one of the reasons why I usually don't see Unique on it, like, Unique is very good on this unit, obviously, but it's able to fill the same role as Mami, which is the role that is created by nerfing full AoE. And that is the, like, secondary DPS. The secondary DPS units are usually very decent mixed attackers that can hit both air and ground units, while doing very decent damage, and could kill either armored units or help kill bosses. So this is very important, and just a very good role, because if you're relying on your full AoEs to do damage, then, you know, if there is just a armored unit, you're going to have some trouble sometimes. But not if you have these secondary DPSs. Besides that, it's one of the best supports, being able to have a time stop, which, you know, very, very powerful. Time stop 5 seconds with a cooldown of only 15. Very powerful. Physical Dark. I don't know how relevant Dark is. I can't, like, some of them are very apparent, but Dark, I can't think of what other Dark units is competing against. But Physical is nice because, obviously, like, Guts teams and stuff, you just get a random buff for using this, because you could probably use, like, Whirlwind and stuff. Next up, we have Mami, which is the magic version of this that is not a support. So, the one downside of Homer is that she kind of does it all. She's one of the best supports. She's one of the best secondary DPSs. But, I mean, she's a secret. That's kind of their thing. They do a lot. Mami is very similar, except magic version. And, a lot more attainable, which is why you saw a lot more of Mami usually. So Mami also, just like Homeru, would hit air. Obviously, it's less useful than Homeru early because she doesn't have time stop, but just a very powerful, all-around great unit. Slightly more expensive than Homeru, but, I mean, it's a mythic, you know? Secret's always a little pushed. So yeah, very good unit that saw a very consistent play, all the way up until, like, update, like, 17, or whenever they added, Gilgamesh, who is sort of just a 1-to-1 upgrade. But before that, Mami was a very, very useful unit that you could see in infinite runs up to that point, especially on magic teams where you might want someone like Mami. Next up, we have Sayako. And I'm going through Mami and Homeru a little faster because they were just very powerful. I feel like most people know these units and have seen them around, so just a quick overview of what they do I think would refresh you. But Sayako is a unit that I almost never saw, and in my opinion is the best unit of the update. And this is because of a few reasons. First, we have cost. Now, cost isn't always the biggest deal. Like Mami and Homer, for instance, they're kind of, you know, they're not, like, Homer's not expensive, but it's not cheap either. And Mami is a little bit expensive, not too much. But Sayako is cheap. And this is very relevant, especially for units that aren't necessarily your most powerful units. Because if you are trying to run, like, let's say Gilgamesh, who's, like, your super powerful unit, you can very easily squeeze a Sayako in there, you know? You're not going to feel too terrible about running this, because you won't have as much of a strain on your budget. Or your just, like, income, I guess. And this also pairs wonderfully with the spawn cap of 5, which, as you see here, is one of the coolest attributes a unit can have. A spawn cap of 4 or 5 means a unit is very interesting instantly, because unique is the best trait for any unit with 3 or less. But as soon as you start to hit 4 or higher, that means you actually will start to see better group damage off of even like superior 3. And also, considering these ends up being multiple hits, means they're also way better at breaking shields than a unique would be. So it's just a very nice upside to see out of a really interesting unit that isn't nearly as pushed as the other two, but has just so many interesting upsides. Also, crit chance. Crit chance is something that isn't really accounted for in this DPS. Because, you know, half the time you just do more damage. So usually I like to take, like, let's say a B stat. So it probably would be around 18k or higher DPS. Let's half that. That would be, what, 27k? We'll reduce that a little bit. Let's go, like, even 22k. Especially if you get a relic or something, you'll be hitting 25k very easily. If not 30k or higher DPS, which is very nice off of a just random unit. Now, it doesn't hit air, which is, I think, the main reason it didn't see play, but it is just a very interesting unit to think about and to talk about. So I love this unit. This is a big reason why I love this update so much. Is just this unit, I think, is like the perfect unit because it's not meta, it's not pushing anything really, but it's just really interesting and there's a lot of stuff to build around. Like, you could just build it with like anything. If there's something that gives you dots, you can go ahead. You can give her dots because she attacks really fast. If you want to build crit, she has crit chance and she attacks really fast, so she's gonna really profit off that. She does multi-hit, not a lot, but she does, so it helps with that. And I think a great example of this is something like Lucy, where it was a good unit, or it was an alright unit at one point, but nowadays it's the exact opposite of Sayako, where Sayako's got like a lot of really cool just like stat wise. Lucy is really cool, which is like just being a summoner. There's not many of those, but everything in her stats are just miserable, especially because of how she summons. Because, you know, she only can have 3 summons at once, 1 of each kind, and then as soon as one dies, she resummons. But on longer maps, that means it'll be longer time till they do damage. So her downtime is immense, and yeah, just everything combined makes Lucy a really unusable unit, especially with the cost. Whereas Sayako, super cheap, so just super amazing unit. One of those that I'm always sad that I couldn't get like a shiny, fully tricked out before Anime Adventures closed. Next up, we are gonna look at Kyoka. Excuse me. Kyoka is pretty average. You know, like there's some things to like about it. Physical fire, so having secondary element is relevant. Fire is pretty good too, but it's not as exciting as like Sayako or Mami or Homaru. Both Kyoka and Madako, to a lesser extent, are not as interesting. But I mean, they're still units. They are ground. They hit 2. They have alright damage numbers. Their DPS is a little low for not hitting air. But it's very usable. Decent range. Decent AoE size. Starts out as a line, which is kind of nice. But it's just a little expensive. Spawn cap of 4 does still mean that superior 3 is actually more impactful if you place all 4 and get them fully maxed out than unique is, which is nice. But she's just really expensive, so chance of that happening, not too high, but still. It's a little sad with this unit, because I think she probably should have been buffed, because Sayako, if you factor in the crit chance, does actually do more damage than Kyoka, which is a little interesting, considering Kyoka both has 1 less placement and is like 35k more expensive, but I mean, it's still usable. If you have her and you wanted to play with her, then that, you know, you wouldn't feel outrageously bad for it. It's just she's not very amazing. Next up, we have Madoko, which is better than Kyoka, basically just because she is a hill unit. So Madoka is just a hill that is magic, so that's nice. I tend to like magic better than physical. I think that generally holds true in Anime Adventures, or at least it did. hits 1. So that's the bigger downside, but it has a really nice SPA. And this doesn't look that amazing. I mean, the DPS is fine, range is fine, damage is pretty decent, SPA is decent, but it just doesn't look that amazing when you contextualize it in like 18.5 or even like 16 and higher. But if you compare it to like a unit added like the previous update, I think, yeah, which was a unit that saw play, was very reasonable, still is considered story mode meta, which is Fuji. And if you compare him with Fuji, I mean, it doesn't feel that outrageous. They are very similar in costs and total cost and placements and everything. But fully maxed out, Midoko has just a little bit less DPS. Only 1 hits, which is the biggest thing. Slightly higher range and way better SPA. So there are definitely some good upsides. It's just, yeah. Obviously, Fuji is definitely better, but Midoko definitely has some upsides that makes her like play better than she looks. So she definitely isn't like she's very usable, which I very like about this update. I think every single unit that were of the main line are very usable, even if some of them are way less exciting and don't scale nearly as well into the later game. They're very interesting and playable. So I love that. Also, Charmy. Charmy. Charmy is very interesting because she's a slow unit that has the exact same properties of Amelia. Her SPA is a little higher base, so you're going to have to work a little harder to get it to hit that perfect slow. But, just like Amelia, you can hit it on placement, which is very nice. And she's only 50 more than Amelia. So if you do it, you won't feel outrageously bad for running her. And, just like Yoshino and a few other units, she returns to the perfect slow at final upgrade, which is very awesome, especially while being a hits 3. Doesn't hit air, which is the only downside of this. But I mean, circle, radius 11, hits 3, with this damage output and range. I mean, that's not bad. Very decent slow unit, especially if you're using it as just support. They can occasionally turn into a, like, just a little bit of extra damage in the late game. In things like, let's say if you're doing the Halloween event, or if you were doing the Halloween event, you would probably prefer to have this over Amelia. Mash is super uninteresting. Just sort of like Kyoka, but not part of the event. Just an alright damage unit. Does hit 3, so maybe slightly better than Kyoka, but just pretty average unit. No one really cared about it. So yeah, the update was really good because it introduced the secondary DPS role of that Homeru and Mami fills, big a non-full AoE, because of the, where is it? The armored update. So yeah, just a very, very great update. Probably the best in Anime Adventures, and what I totally would recommend for games to look towards on what updates should really look like, to be honest. So yeah, thanks for watching.